Turn your living room into a joyful, hands-free playroom with CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ. Your child sings, moves, and learns right alongside JJ and friends, all on the big screen. It's designed thoughtfully to spark speech, rhythm, and coordination through songs and active play. Try an ad-free, safe, and interactive way to make screen time part of their learning and growth. Parents love how easy it is, voice-controlled and frustration-free. Kids love every moment of singing, laughing, and playing along. It's fun for them, and it's feel-good for you. Available now in the Volley app on your smart TV. Just search Volley in your TV's app store and start your free trial of CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ today. That's CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ. Available now in the Volley app on your smart TV. Search Volley and start your free trial today.
Volley. Welcome to Homeschooling Outside the Box, the podcast that encourages and equips moms to homeschool an outside-the-box child. Hey there, I'm Cindy Renna, and thanks so much for listening. Happy New Year to all of you. I'm so excited to be back on the podcast. I took a very long break over the holidays. I hope all of you enjoyed your holidays. We started off by getting sick, which is not the most fun way to start a Christmas vacation, but we made it through Christmas, and then we were so excited to have visitors right after the new year. So our homeschool and our home and our life really took about a month off, and we were ready to restart. Do you know how that feels? How you're just chomping at the bit to get back to the books and get back into a routine and get back on a good schedule and just to feel validated about some of the choices you've made. If you are homeschooling, it feels so good to get back on that first day and say, okay, this is right. This is good. This is how our lives work best. So we had a wonderful half week back. We started back last Wednesday, so it just felt really good to get back to normal. So today I want to pick back up with our series on getting started with homeschooling. But before we begin, I have to do a public shout out to my husband. If you notice, I sound pretty good. Some of the last few episodes have been pretty rough. My mic broke. We lost some headphones. Things were a little scratchy and not very pleasant aesthetically to listen to. So thankfully, I got a new mic for Christmas. So my husband is the best. He's also my tech guy and my editor, and the podcast would not exist without him. So we're very thankful for my husband, Lee. So I hope it sounds a lot more pleasant than it has in the past. Okay, but we are going to talk today about the third step in getting started, and that is where you start to get into the curriculum and the subjects. But first, just a quick review. A lot of the first step is about mindset, just beginning. So you can go back and listen to that one. I'll link to it in the show notes. And then the second episode, we talked about trying to pick a homeschool method that you resonate with. We also talked about finding your space. Where are you physically going to homeschool? And then I also mentioned a routine, and I think I gave you homework. So hopefully you've considered some of those things. Where are the organic, natural places in your day that you could fit homeschool or kind of move things around in your current schedule so that it would fit a little bit better if you're already homeschooling? So go back and listen to those if you haven't already. And if you have, and you've already considered all that, then let's jump into deciding what subjects to teach. Okay, so the first part of this is to do the not so fun side. This is kind of boring, but necessary. You have to check if your state has requirements. Homeschool laws vary state to state. I've mentioned the Homeschool Legal Defense Association before. They're a great resource to go and check out your state. You can talk to a counselor, but you have to somehow find out if you have any legal requirements. From what I gather, when the children are younger, that's not such a big deal, but as they get into middle school, high school, I mean, obviously at some point you're going to have to worry about graduation requirements. So as your kids get older, this gets more serious. You definitely want to make sure you're hitting any state requirements. Most homeschoolers I know go above and beyond as it is. I mean, you are deciding to take on your child's entire education, or at least a grunt of it and a bulk of it in your own home. So usually homeschoolers are pretty motivated about this, but it's a good idea to go on and Google any public school graduation requirements in your area. You can also go and look at the private schools and kind of find what fits for your area and for your kids. You also want to consider the ages of your children and what homeschool method you choose when you're considering what subjects to teach. So, for instance, we're Charlotte Mason inspired homeschoolers. She has a lot more subjects than your traditional. If you just walked into a public school right now and listened to what the kids were learning, it's going to be probably along the lines of reading, writing, math, social studies, science, maybe PE, maybe an art or music class once a week or every now and then. So it's going to be pretty basic. Now, when you start looking at things like the Charlotte Mason education, you're hearing phrases like hymn study and Shakespeare as his own class, and you're reading poetry and you're studying history in a unique way. And so you're doing all of the basics, but you're layering in all these enriching subjects. You have to take all that into consideration when you're picking your subjects. Okay, so once you know what you must do, now you get to decide what you want to do. So as long as your want includes what you have to do, here's the fun part. I've included an extensive list of Charlotte Mason inspired subjects. Don't hear these, or later if you're going to read these, don't feel compelled to include these every single term or even every year. To simplify things, I kind of like to keep them in groups. So the way we organize ours is what we can do as a group, because I've got 4 children. So the boys are all right around the same age and skill level. So they're learning a lot of the same things. Now, my daughter is only 6, and so she's kind of she doesn't participate in group work completely with us. She sort of has her own things, but she's welcome to join when she wants. So things that you can generally do with the whole family. These are subjects that are not dependent on skill sets, and they can be taught to a big group all at once. So these types of subjects would be Bible, or like a family devotional you might be doing, geography, habit training, or character development, or manners, or anything like that. History, hymn study, literature, memory work, music study, nature study, physical education, picture study, poetry, science in the lower grades, probably through like years 1 through 6. You can definitely do science as a group effort. And then Shakespeare. The other category of subjects falls under individual work. So these are subjects that are dependent on skill sets, and they require individual consideration. If some of this sounds like deja vu, if it sounds familiar, I talked how we break these up into the group work and individual work. I talked about this on the last podcast about things spiraling. So you're not crazy. It does sound repetitive. It is, but just you might need to hear it one more time because it covers a lot of ground. So individual work would be things like anything with the languages. Okay, language arts is the bigger category it falls into. I like to split hairs like Andrew Pudewa does and call it the arts of language. There is a difference in the mindset and in what's covered. I'm going to link to a talk he did on that. It's really kind of changed the way I think about language in general. So some of the things that are covered in that are listening. So that would be when you're reading aloud, a family, I like to do this, just a family read aloud book. So literature, and this could include audiobooks as well. Speaking, okay, having your child work on his or her speaking skills. If you're doing Charlotte Mason's approach, you're going to think oral narration at this point. Even reciting memory work, or if you're able to get into a group where there's drama, or we have our homeschool group that meets, has a great recitation / show and tell. The little kids can get up on stage and kind of talk about their favorite toy or what they want for Christmas. And then some of the older kids can recite scripture or poetry that they've memorized, or tell about an event. So these are all really great ways to work on their speaking skills. We also have reading. So that would be either for the, very early stages, that's learning to read. And then after they're competent readers, that transitions for us into independent reading. So just them taking on the role of, I am a reader, and having a book that they're reading. Writing is another topic. So that would be handwriting, learning how to write, copy work, learning what to write. And then Charlotte Mason talks about having a commonplace book, which is a great thing to have. I've got one, and it's simply a book where you keep all the thoughts and ideas and things you're learning in one common place. So I will have this book next to me while I'm reading and, underlining things. If I want to write something down so I can remember it, I will take this to church, and during the sermon, I take my notes in there. And essentially, you're putting together your own book of great ideas, great thoughts that you can look back on. I also like to carry my old commonplace books with me in my purse. And then if I'm stuck in a waiting room somewhere, I have great reading material right on me. I don't have to worry about having a thick book. I can just have this thin thing, and it's got some really good things to read. So eventually, as your kids get older into the high school years, maybe it's good to transition into keeping a commonplace book. I like to say that you should read something worth writing down every day. There's also written narration. So again, with the Charlotte Mason method, around fourth grade or age 10, they kind of transition from oral to written narration. That's where your composition skills start to come in. It's when you're working on essays and putting your ideas into coherent thoughts back onto paper. So there's also grammar, spelling, or dictation. So that's all that falls under reading. And then there's also, all that falls under writing, because that's all helping your kids to become a more effective communicator, which is the podcast I did with Andrew Pudewa. I'll link to that in the show notes. That was a great episode about why it's important. Why do we need our kids to be effective communicators? All right, then there's also foreign language. So Latin is a great one to start with, and that I would say probably around age 10, 11, start with that. But then you also want to try to lay in a foreign language on top of it, because nobody's speaking Latin. Latin is very valuable for reading, and there's lots of great reasons to study Latin, but it's good to try to encourage your kids to speak another language too. And then that'll prepare them for the high school years and college, whatever they might do in the future. So the next part of individual work I like to call STEM-L, and that just, I kind of tacked on logic to the acronym science, technology, engineering, and math. So science, this would start in the upper grades, so maybe around year 7, and then technology, engineering, those are things that we kind of try to work in maybe every other year. It's not something that we're doing consistently, and when we do it, it's usually like a once a week thing. So these are not, you're not teaching all of this every single day. math, and logic. So logic, you can start when they're little, like kind of game-based, but then to move into formal logic by the high school years. And then the last category of individual work is personal development. So this is where if your child's playing a sport, that would fall under here. Performing arts, such as dance or playing the piano or being in theater. Handicraft or art, this is where they're learning they're learning a skill. Devotional, if you can encourage them to do devotionals first thing in the morning, maybe have a book that they're reading, or maybe kind of helping them to develop a quiet time as they get older. Citizenship. This is another very Charlotte Mason-y term. So this is slightly different than character or habits. This is really focused on being a good citizen. And it's funny because I look back, I think back to when I was in school and we got a mark for citizenship. And then later in the years, I think they changed it to conduct. But it's how you behave in your society. So this is a really important thing to teach our kids. So as Americans, or whatever country you live in has certain values and traditions, and these are great things to pass on to your kids. They're important. And they're also going to be running the country one day, so you want to keep that in mind. Okay, and then we also have zone work, which is slightly different than chores. It's more about taking ownership of an area of your home. So I'm going to do an episode on that in the next month or so, because I'm excited to talk about that. We've really loved it. But that's, if you're going to put chores down, just something that they're doing that teaches them to be a member of the helpful member of the household. And then other, or therapy. So this is, where if you're doing the Sunrise program, which I can link to episodes on that, that's great. This is where your room time would go. If you drive out to speech therapy or whatever it is, this would be whatever you're working on for therapy to help your child develop. Okay, so again, sounds like a lot, but you're spreading them out over your child's education and over the year and over the term. And if you are teaching in the Charlotte Mason fashion, you're doing short lessons, so you're not spending 45 minutes or an hour on math and then trying to figure out how you're going to put everything else in. Okay, so now we move on to curriculum, which this is probably most homeschoolers' favorite subject. This is the super fun part, is picking out all the curriculum for the subjects that you need. It can also be very overwhelming because homeschooling has grown, which is fantastic. And that means there's lots of options. So before you start looking, I want you to think, if you've ever been to an Aldi grocery store, you know that the way it's set up, there are very limited choices. There are shorter aisles. There's not, 35 bags of coffee to choose from. There's maybe 5. And so you want to stay in a simple, minimalist mindset when it comes to curriculum. That's why it's so important to choose your method first, because for me, if I say, okay, we're Charlotte Mason homeschoolers, and then I am looking for history curriculum and I run across a textbook, I'm not even going to look at it because that's not how Charlotte Mason taught history. So I can easily eliminate options based on my philosophy and my method, and then I don't have to waste time worrying, am I missing out on something? Should we be doing it a different way? Because you will never feel 1,000% satisfied with every single thing you're teaching. So it's all a learning experience. You need to start with something that you feel confident in and that you love. The way you figure out what that is you ask some questions. So do you want an open and go curriculum? That's where, like a great example of this is All About Learning Press. They do all about reading and all about spelling. So they send you the book, you order it, they send it to you. There's all these little cards you have to cut up on perforated edges and put in your box, all of your spelling words. But you literally open the book and it says, you say this, then you ask this, then you do this. And it tells you exactly what to do. So there's pretty much no prep. It's in the beginning of the year. So when you get into the day-to-day, you're just opening the book and you're reading what to do. So that's an open and go curriculum. Now there are people like me who are a little bit crazy and love the idea of putting together their own curriculum. So if you are like that and you just love the idea of, okay, we're going to study the Civil War. Let me go seek out, all the books that are about the Civil War and maybe a project we could do. And, and you really love putting that together. Then that's what's great about homeschool is you can kind of find some guidelines and just go and pick the books that you want to read and not read the books you don't want to read and teach it in a way that is meaningful for you and your family. And that's really what's key is just to pick the best curriculum to fit your family. Okay? So it's good to read reviews. It's good to ask your friends, but take it with a grain of salt because they're not going to be the ones teaching every day. So reference the homeschool method you chose for suggestions, but remember, don't ever be more devoted to a philosophy or a curriculum than the person you are educating. Commit to the curriculum you choose for an entire term. So I'd give it a whole 3 months and then be prepared to reevaluate at the end of those 3 months. And also don't fall into the trap of thinking, okay, I bought this curriculum for my oldest child, so it's got to work for all 4 of them. It might not. You might have to switch based on your child's needs. So kind of hold that loosely as a hope. It's nice when it happens that you can teach it. And I've had many curriculum where we do use it for all the kids, and it's great. But remember to study your child and what they need. Also, don't forget to consider what supplies you're going to need. So is your child going to need graph paper? Do you need handwriting paper? Do you need scissors or art supplies, or are there science experiment supplies? We've got one art curriculum that we love, but it is very intense in the setup. There's a lot to kind of gather in the beginning. It's artistic pursuits and it's wonderful. But there is a big list of things that you need. Apologia Science is another one. We love, love, love Apologia, but in the beginning of a new book, you've got to open that supplies list and go down it and get everything you're going to need. Some people like to do this all in the beginning of the year. It can be pretty pricey to do it that way. And, things can get lost or broken or misplaced. And so I sort of like to do it by term, a few weeks or a few months at a time, look ahead, see what we're going to need in the next month or so, and just get those items. But you definitely don't want to be going day to day, flipping and saying, okay, what do you need for that experiment tomorrow? And then running around like a crazy person trying to find it. That's a lot of information for you. Like I said, the biggest takeaway is just not to get overwhelmed. It's do not go to the grocery store hungry without a list, okay? This is a lot like feeding your family. You should go when you're in the right mindset, and you should have a plan before you go. You should have a meal plan and know what you're going to have for dinner that week, and then work backwards and figure out what food you're going to buy to make those meals. So it's the same thing with buying your curriculum. You don't just want to be, oh, this looks fun or this looks exciting. I don't know where I'm going to put it, but we'll just grab it. You want to go in the opposite direction and know what subjects you're going to teach, know what your method is, and once you're really pretty excited about that and pretty confident, that's the time that you start looking at Kathy Duffy's reviews or Amazon reviews or whatever it is where you're opening the can of worms looking for a new curriculum. That is your homework assignment for today, or your takeaway. I hate to call it homework. Homeschoolers don't have homework, or they shouldn't. So your takeaway, your call to action, is to figure out what you're going to teach. Start with the basics. You want reading, writing, math, okay, Bible. If you're a believer, that needs to be, your whole homeschool should really be focused on relationships and discipleship, and then funnel out from there. So add in the basics. Make sure they're getting a well-balanced meal of vegetables on what they need, and then add in all the enrichment in layers. But definitely you should not be exhausting yourself trying to teach or read poetry and hymn study and memory work, and then you haven't done math in weeks. So try to keep the basics in mind and then have fun. Next time, we are going to talk about how to organize your space, and then how to plan your year, your term, your week, and your day. And after that, you should feel pretty good about starting homeschool. So the next episode in this will be the last one, episode 4. So I look forward to talking to you then. Have a great week. Thanks so much for listening to Homeschooling Outside the Box. If you are loving the show, please head over to iTunes and leave a review. This is a great way to help other moms just like you find encouragement in their homeschool with their outside-the-box child as well. For more encouragement, be sure to head to cindyrenna.com, and you can check out some great blog posts as well as a shop that will help equip you on your homeschooling journey.